what is your optional subject?
Sir, my optional subject is public administration, sir.
Public administration. Okay. Sripati ji, you can talk. You can start.
Oh, okay. Narayana Sarma.
Yes, sir.
You are appearing again. Okay, nice. So you have opted for foreign service as option number 3, right? Now, why is there a hesitation? First is administrative service, second police, and the third is foreign. Why not service?
Sir, I wish to stay in proximity to my family, sir. And secondly, sir, I think I would like to complement the external role played by FS by strengthening the country internally by being in IAS or IPS, sir. So these are the reasons.
You think that's a wonderful answer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think I have decided based on this, and also while preparing, I was primarily inspired by seeing some IAS officers and IPS officers, sir. So I had naturally chosen it as the first preference, sir.
Okay. Now, among your hobbies, you have given mobile photography as a hobby.
Yes, sir.
Tom, Dick, and Harry, this and that, they take photograph with mobile phones, and then they keep sending it across, whether for good or bad or whatever be the reasons. How can you consider that to be a hobby or an extracurricular activity of interest? What are the kind of photographs you take out of your mobile phone?
Yes, sir. Sir, firstly, I take this hobby as a very personal activity, sir. I have been honing it for so many years, sir. I go out taking mobile and go out deliberately looking for a subject, sir, and then I click it. The photographs belong to the genres of people, culture, nature, and also various other genres, sir. So thirdly, I actually make a difference in the mobile photography by using the professional features that come with the mobile camera. I also maintain a diversified portfolio of collections over a period of time. And I intend to bring happiness and thoughtfulness in through my photographs, sir. So this is how I make a difference from the mainstream mobile photography, sir.
Okay, see, such a photography, you say that you have a portfolio, different types. Now, can you just describe some, like, is it natural scenery? Natural scenery is a broad canvas, okay. Now, do you trek and or hike in American sense or whatever? You just capture somebody with a car, this and that, and then go and say you are hiking. Are you traveling? Trekking, in the sense that you have to literally climb up the hills. Are you doing it?
Sir, not necessarily, sir. Here, sir, by nature photography, I would like to explain some. Firstly, sir, the photographs I take, they have an element of creativity, sir. For example, I'd just like to quote one photo. Recently, I took a photo of Western Ghats. So, in the foreground was a lake, a complete lake, which is filled with water due to monsoon. So, I showcased the defining aspect of this Coimbatore city in that photograph, sir. And there was beautiful birds flying along this Western Ghats. So that was another creative element. So I take the photos just like a normal person, but with an element of creativity added to it.
Okay. Do you edit the photograph?
Yes, sir. I edit, but I do not overdo it, sir. I just alter the colors such that it becomes.
If taking a photograph and then putting it in your gallery is one thing that anybody can do.
Yes, sir.
Say that you have created a portfolio of various things. Now, take for example, you said that you took a photograph of a lake in the west. Which lake is it?
Sir, can you please repeat the last part?
Lake is it? Which lake?
Yes, sir. Sir, the lake is named Perur Lake, sir. Perur Chettipalayam Lake in Coimbatore. So behind that lake, in the backdrop, was the Western Ghats. So the lake was very much.
Not a lake. That Chettipalayam is a lake. Yeah. But what is the scenery you saw there, except the background hills?
Yes, sir. Sir, the scenery was that now it is Coimbatore is seeing the southwest monsoon season, so the water levels are full to the brim levels, sir. And also it is the season of the migratory birds. I saw some migratory birds there flying across the Western Ghats, and I took a photo of very greenery, sir. The Western Ghats was very green, so it is a rare sight. So I just went out on an expedition and took these photos, sir. As for portfolio, I am maintaining it in a social media page, sir. So far, I have collected more than 200 photographs and displaying it for the public, sir, and sharing it with my friend circle.
How many likes have been there? You said 200 photographs. How many people have liked it?
Yes, sir. Sir, usually, regularly, people 20 to 25 people like it, sir. But some photos have really crossed the benchmark and have garnered more than 150 likes, sir.
Have you heard of something called photoshopping?
Yes, sir. So photoshopping refers to the digital manipulation of the particular photo to make it very look differently from the reality, sir.
Is it only looking differently from reality, or is it something?
Sir, it can be taken in two perspectives, sir. One, it enhances the existing picture to give a more appealing visual. Secondly, it is sometimes also used in a negative manner to morph or portray in a different way, sir. So both kind of uses are possible, sir.
Okay, now you have mentioned about competition essay, competition by Tamil Nadu Biodiversity Board.
Yes, sir.
Human conflict. Okay. Now, very recently, I think it was somewhere in the Karnataka region only, the elephants were crossing. I don't know whether you've seen this. Since you say that the photographs you take and then put it on social media, you would definitely have seen this. So, a herd of elephants are crossing the road. Lot of people were disturbing the animals. They were just moving quietly. The one animal, one elephant got really annoyed, chased the people, and one fellow got killed. Okay, this is the situation. It is depicted. What's your take? You give your comments on this. This is just shown to you. What's your comment on that?
Sir, my comment would be that one is the low awareness of people regarding the conservation of wildlife, sir. So people being low awareness, they attack animals thinking that they are harming them. And secondly, sir, from the perspective of governance, a human-animal conflict has been left unattended, sir, properly. So that is why people are forced to retaliate against animals. So if this conflict was mitigated earlier, people wouldn't have resorted to such crude or extreme measures, sir.
I think you did not understand my question properly. See, here, the elephant herd was just crossing the road. Okay. There is something called elephant migratory corridor. Have you heard of it?
Yes, sir.
You have heard of it. You are from Coimbatore, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Coimbatore, nearer Kala, the elephant migratory corridor is very much there, and courtesy one institution, two institutions, the corridor has been disconnected. It's discontinuous. Okay. Something similar in that kind of an area just happened. Okay. The people were shouting, yelling, howling. Somebody was beating the road with his jacket. One elephant of all, maybe about 30 or 40 were crossing along with the car. One elephant got annoyed, chased the people. One fellow tripped and fell down. It trampled him to death. This is it. So, what is your view? Why this kind of a thing has happened? Is it the fault of the animal or fault of the human beings?
Sir, this I would say is the fault of human beings at large, sir, because animals are known to migrate over these traditional paths, and when humans started development, it took over the spaces of these elephants without understanding them. So whenever elephants comes, then the contact between humans and elephants happens. People get feared, and animals also get insecure, and both end up in conflicting with each other, sir. So I think humans are at fault here, sir.
Humans are at fault. Are you sure that this human-animal conflict can be resolved at any time? If so, what would be your suggestion, your advice? Let's say you are going to head the forest department. How do we eliminate such human-animal conflict?
Sir, at the outset, I would like to clarify that eliminating human-animal conflict is a very ambitious thing, sir. Going forward, the development will be keeping on happening, so conflict will be inevitable, sir. But how, to what extent this conflict can be mitigated, that can be addressed. So, if I would require your permission, may I go ahead with the solution, sir? Yes, sir. So the first solution, each conflict is determined by a local set of geography, the kind of animal involved, and the people affected, sir. So we cannot have one size fits all approach. However, broadly, we can think of one sustainable development, that is having in place mitigation measures. And secondly, from animal perspective, the habitat can be strengthened in terms of green fodder and water availability so that animals don't come out. And thirdly, community awareness can be created. People can be provided basic infrastructure like toilets so that they don't go inside forests. And lastly, sir, the governance also has to have a synergy. So both the general district administration and forest department need to partner with people and approach this in a very significant way. So it has to be institutionalized, sir. So overall, my comment would be that this has to become a political issue, sir. Only if the crisis is acknowledged, can dedicated policies be framed to tackle such conflict.
No, why do you bring in political issue here?
Yes, sir.
How does it impact?
Sir, I would like to explain this with an example of a movie I recently watched called Sharani. In that movie, it is shown how political legislators, they play a crucial role.
No, listen.
Yes, sir.
Movie, you just forget about it. For that reason, most of the times the things are twisted out of context. Right? From real issues, if you know. If you don't know, you can say so, no problem. Don't quote anything from the movies. I don't believe.
Okay, sir. Sorry, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, but I would like to explain, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I think these people who are affected by human-animal conflict, their interests are not represented. So they need to have some kind of voice in the political arena so that their crisis also gets acknowledged and receives due attention in the form of policies or a dedicated institutional approach to it, sir.
How do you react to this statement? So long as human needs are met, whatever is available today is just sufficient. But if greed is to be met, then nothing is sufficient. The entire Western Ghats can be gobbled up in no time, maybe 10 years if you, it can be gobbled up. What's your take on that comment?
Sir, I think the approach should be to satisfy need and not greed, sir, because our resources are very scarce, but the people are very large in numbers. So I think without compromising the future needs or future generations' developmental needs, if we are to go forward, then I think we need to just satisfy our need and not look at greed. Because if we go on pursuing our greed, then nature would get destructed. And our wealth or our health is directly linked to the nature's health and wealth, sir. So it would be self-defeating, sir. So therefore, only fulfilling need would be the goal, sir.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Ramohan. Yeah, Mr. Ramohan.
Okay. Hi, I'm on. What is GMTCR? Global Minimum Corporate Tax Rate. What does it mean? It's a very new terminology which has come in the economics today, which can be in the geoeconomics. What is GMTCR?
Sir, GMTCR, initially it was proposed by the OECD BEPS project under Pillar 2 proposal.
OECD?
Yes, initially, sir. Initially it was under OECD BEPS project, and now it has gained traction with the G20 grouping taking a decision on it, sir. So under this, the countries have consensus agreed to put a 10% global minimum tax rate on the foreign businesses. In a way, sir, this would work like one. A country has to tax the foreign services firm, or else if it feels it is unfairly taxed, the country which is a owner that would tax the entity, sir. So kind of preventing the tax evasion is the key goal here, sir.
How do they prevent it? Where they put? Why this happened? What is the necessity for this? What is the cost for this? I see GMCCR approach.
Sir, the main cause cited is that the existence of tax havens. Many nations started to give tax incentives as a form of attracting investments and staying competitive. This has led to many companies shifting their headquarters to tax havens like Keynes Island, etc. So this has led to a loss of revenue for the countries where the firm operates. Like for example, sir, Apple is operating in Ireland with its headquarters, and it is earning so much money, but the parent country US has lost many revenue because of this. And US feels, or other countries in general feel, that if the firm is unfairly taxed, that is, it is taxed only a minimum value, the country where it is being operated can tax extra amount to check the tax evasion, sir.
Very good. You are
Thank
correct
you, sir.
answer. Partial, very good. What is carbon tax? Carbon tax.
Yes, sir. Sir, may I request, may I know whether it is with reference to the EU carbon border tax, sir?
Carbon, yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, carbon border tax is a new mechanism wherein the EU has proposed that the imports of carbon intensive goods are to be taxed, sir. So that is the main proposal. So the move is aimed at incentivizing the manufacturers across the world to shift to a low carbon technology. So this is the aim, sir.
How does it affect India?
Sir, India has been consistently maintaining that the common but differentiated responsibilities should be the key policy in climate change. Developed countries have caused so much pollution; they should take the historical responsibility. As a developing nation, India has its own goals. There is an inevitable need to take a high carbon development pathway for at least time being, sir. So ours will get affected. Our interest, our trade might get affected, sir, if this is implemented.
How does it get affected? What are the things which in India, like Indian exports, which get affected by this?
Yes, sir. Sir, for example, firstly, the automobile industry. For example, they procure components which are manufactured by MSMEs, and the MSMEs also emit emissions in the process. Suppose we are exporting automobiles to foreign countries tomorrow, it may lead to an embargo on our exports, sir. So that is one way how it can affect us. Most of the carbon intensive sectors in Indian economy include textiles, and then also leather industries, etc.
No.
So
How does it, the leather and textile industries have this thing? They don't have carbon input.
sorry, sir, then I stand corrected. I could not exactly recollect which industries are carbon intensive at the moment.
They are okay. I'll tell you the answer. They basically steel, cement, and really allied industry, which have got high carbon content. So
Yes,
what is a greenhouse gas? So it is taken from the greenhouse effect of the carbon dioxide. What are the greenhouse gases? What are they?
sir, greenhouse gases are those which trap the emissions from the earth, and they are capable of trapping and thereby heating the atmosphere. Some of the gases are most popular one is carbon dioxide, sir. Then then methane is also one of the greenhouse gases. At the moment, I could only recollect these two, sir.
The two more. Find out. There are four gases are there, four elements, and also carbon CFC, which is a compound. There are four elements and one compound. They are the basically greenhouse gases. So
Thank you, sir. I'll
right.
go back and refer, sir. Thank you, sir. I'll go back and refer, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. These are four. Find out them. And you have studied about your sociology. What they talk, the sociology, there's a great research was made on Devadasi system.
Sir,
Devadasi system.
Sir, my optional is public administration, sir.
Public administration. I will shift to public administration. Yes, doesn't matter. Public administration, in ancient India, the disputes in the trading community was solved by which organization during the time of the kings? There's an organization which is meant to solve the trade disputes. How much would be tax? How much should be the selling price? What should be the input? If there is quarrel from two sets of producers or workers, they should be sorted out. There was an organization in ancient India which looked after that in every country, every city. What is it called?
Sir, I do not know the exact thing, but if you may allow, I would take a guess, sir.
Yeah, take your guess.
Sir, it is Shrenis, sir. Merchant guilds.
Correct, you are
Shrenis.
perfectly right. Sreni is the
Thank you, sir.
merchant guild. So, but there was head of the merchant guild. You are right.
Thank you, sir.
Then, about the electoral system in ancient India, where is the record available? System followed in electoral system.
Sir, the records date back to the Cholas period, where this inscription called Uttiramerur inscription has been unearthed, and it was belonging to the time of Rajaraja Chola, sir. It spoke about Kodavolai system, that is elections that have been held in local bodies, sir.
One new correction you can make, it is not Rajaraja Chola, find out who is the king. And then, what does it, what are the qualifications put for the voter and what is the qualification put for the competitor, counselor? They put some qualification. What are these qualifications?
Sir, at the moment I could only remember that there was an age qualification, sir. And that the president and the contester should have paid tax consistently.
You should not be involved in criminal cases. And here nobody is allowed to, like American president. Nobody can be after 2 successive terms. He cannot become.
Okay, sir.
And what are the recent excavations in Tamil Nadu, which talk about ancient Tamil civilization, whatever you call it, ancient Indian civilization? For past 5 years, they have been excavating. Which are their places and what they have found out there?
Sir, one is Keladi, sir, which is situated on the banks of Vaigai River, sir. And second is Adichanallur. And third is Sivakalai site, sir. So these three have been in use for the past 5 years or so, sir.
Where they have found out the ornaments, keratins, all those things. Some set of sculptures were found in Adichanallur, but they found a system of thing which is similar to Indus Valley ornaments, which is that place. That's the fourth place. You mentioned 3 places. Fourth place.
Sir, I could not recollect the exact
There's a place
sir.
called Kudumana.
Yes, sir. I now I could recollect it, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I'll come back to you. Sir, Vijaya, you want to ask? Vijaya?
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Narayana Sarma, I find I have kept your paper very carefully, which I had asked questions last time.
Yes, ma'am.
And I do recollect about your man-animal conflict, about which Mr. Sripati touched upon.
Yes,
you had won a prize in an essay competition and its remedies. And last time you were not able to give a very logical, there was not much clarity in what you talked about, because you have mentioned it in your paper. Have you been able to amplify what you have written in that paper? And
Yes,
what are the remedies? Could you tell me what are the remedies you have suggested for the man-animal conflict? Something substantial?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, this paper I wrote about more about the Coimbatore region, where the human-elephant conflict is primarily important. So here I found out the reasons being the land use change across near the forest range. That is, agriculture is being done, where sugarcane, rice, and other such crops attract elephants. So I had suggested some solutions specific to this, ma'am. First was change of crop choice. And secondly, adopting nature-based solution, that is having a bee fencing, the bio-fencing, which repels the elephants. That was the second solution I suggested. Thirdly, technologies like RFID, GPS collaring, LIDAR, or also satellite imaging, which can be used to understand each individual animal, that is elephant, as well as landscape much better, so that crafted solutions can be adopted. And fourthly, I had also suggested community participation, where a community member takes note of animal activity and shares it with forest department, thereby alerting the entire community. So I have suggested briefly the mitigation measures in the paper, ma'am.
You belong to Namakkal, na?
Yes, ma'am. I was born in Namakkal, but I'm staying since birth in Coimbatore.
At Coimbatore. But you know something about Namakkal, your birthplace?
Yes, ma'am.
If somebody wants to ask you what are the good places to visit, tourist places to visit Namakkal, what would you suggest that they visit?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, firstly, it is the religious places which I would suggest: the Namagiri Fort and the Namagiri Taya temple there, the Namakkal Anjaneya
Namagiri
temple.
Fort. Can you just quickly tell me what is the historical significance of the Namagiri Fort? I mean, there's a legend about it. Interesting legend, no?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I would like to quote mythological history, ma'am. Is that what you are asking, ma'am?
No, it is on a hillock, no? The fort was located on a hillock.
Yes,
and there's something about how when Lord Anjaneya, I think he carried the Sanjeevani mountain, he came down there to, I think Dr. Ramohan will be able to substantiate that. And this was then, this came up. There is some background to that fort. And there is a mosque and a temple in that.
Ma'am, currently I'm not aware of this, ma'am, but I will definitely go back and refer, ma'am.
And about the Anjaneya temple, you have any idea, the Hanuman temple?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, it is a very high statue, ma'am. And legends say that...
about how high? How high would it be?
Ma'am, I do not have the exact number, but I could say that there is a legend that the statue keeps on growing, and therefore they place the nail on the Hanuman's head and so that it doesn't grow. So this fact I know, ma'am. Ma'am, as for the
I think it's about 18 feet tall. I think it's around 18 feet tall as of now. I don't know if it has been growing after that. Yes, and anything else? Any other significance about the temple?
Ma'am, one more significance is that the Namakkal Anjaneya, it's a monolithic statue. Yeah. And secondly, it is also having the butter coat, ma'am. Usually the butter coat is being done for the statue. So these are additional facts regarding them, ma'am.
Okay. And who built the fort, the Namakkal fort? During whose reign was it built? I think it was the Madurai Nayakars. Just check out about that.
Okay, ma'am. I will go and refer, ma'am. Thank you.
You've heard of this Human Development Index?
Yes, ma'am.
What is this Human Development Index and who brings out the report?
Ma'am, Human Development Index represents the progress each individual countries or states within it have achieved on fronts of education, that is literacy, the income, the standard of living measured by the income, and also the health, ma'am. So it is released by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, ma'am.
And India is ranked where in that?
Ma'am, India's rank is currently 131, ma'am, in the HDL.
131, okay. And which is the first country there? Recently they had ranked which country as #1 in that?
Ma'am, I'm not aware about the exact country, but I'm sure that it belongs to Europe.
I think it is Denmark, followed by Sweden and
New Zealand. Denmark, New Zealand, Australia, Sweden.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
I am done, ma'am. I'm done because he's already been questioned earlier. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All the best to you.
One question on Namakkal.
Yes, sir.
Karmaji. Who is the famous scientist associated with the Namakkal temple?
Sir, it is a mathematician, yes, Ramanujam, sir.
Very good. What did you do?
Sir, Sri Ramanujam is said to have said that his mathematical problem-solving abilities were because of Namagiri Tayar's grace. And the Namagiri Tayar's shrine is located in this Namakkal fort, sir, Namakkal fort area. So that is the link, sir.
What was math? Ramanujan is a theoretical mathematician of numerical mathematics. Where is it applied today? Now Ramanujan's invention, theories. Any area of science where it is applicable? It is vastly useful, applied anywhere in the world, wherever you go. There is a stamp of Ramanujan in that particular thing. What is that?
Sir, I am not aware about the exact application, but I could say that his contribution were primarily related to partition numbers, sir. Partition numbers, sir.
What a practical application is where? That is the only theory of numbers, which is the, okay, I will tell you.
Yes, sir.
All the codes you use in the bank, PIN codes, 10-digit PIN codes of bank, and then your cell phone numbers, all these 10 and more than 10-digit codes, which are supposed to be unbreakable, They are all derived from Ramanujan mathematics. And interstellar travel, that's also based on Ramanujan's inventions. So there's
Yes, sir.
also a number called Ramanujan number. Do you know what it is?
Yes, sir. It is 1729, sir.
What is it?
Sir, it is a magic number, I believe they say, but I do not know the exact details of it, sir. Sorry.
Okay. It is the lowest number which can be expressed as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. You can make it out, you can try. It is
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
It is lowest number which can be expressed as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. 1 cubed plus 7, 8. That to find out. That's it.
Yes, sir. Sure,
Okay,
sir.
good.
Thank you, sir.
So, Sripati ji, you can ask.
There's a place called Kanuvai Coast. Why is it called Kanuvai? Does it have any significance?
Yes, sir. Sir, Kanuvai means, the Vai means a passage, sir. So here the Western Ghats is a valley, sir. So between these two nodes of Western Ghats, it acts like a passage to the other part of Kerala through Coimbatore. So it is called Kanuvai, sir. So it looks like Kanu. It's a small opening, sir, but it is a passage. So Kanuvai, it explains the meaning, sir.
Is there a difference between Kanavai and Kanuvai?
No, sir, I am not exactly aware about the difference, sir.
Okay, it's just the local lingo. One says Kanuvai, the other says Kanavai. Simple. That's it.
Yes, sir.
The lingo. That's all.
Yes, sir.
Now you're from Coimbatore. Okay. I think last time you appeared, quite a bit has been spoken about Coimbatore, and I asked things also. Let me see you opted for, where is that one? Just disappears. Just 1 moment. Yeah. I think Ramu and I have already asked him about these things, foreign service, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is Rudra or Madheswaran. Yeah.
Dr. Madheswaran?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, Mr. Narayana Sarma, you're a electronics communication engineering. You've done BTech in that, correct?
Yes, sir. I have done BTech in ECE in Amrita University of Coimbatore, sir.
Amrita University, I see. Okay, that's nice. All right, so you must have actually, a lot of discussion with, Sripati on the human-animal interaction.
Yes, sir.
And so in the same somewhat related context, you must have seen in the last few months a lot of news about flooding, heavy rains, uncontrolled flooding all over the world. I mean, within our monsoons, we are seeing in, Karnataka has gone through. Similarly, the Krishna Godavari has been in spate. Himachal Pradesh has gone through a massive flooding again. Similarly in Germany, similarly in China, in some countries in Latin America. So what does that, seriously indicate? And this is not in the last few years, I think this pattern is now, quite unpredictable and heavy flooding all over. So in the context of climate change, what are you perceiving this as in terms of, problems as well as what kind of solutions?
Sir, I believe this is due to the anthropogenic cause, the climate change, sir. From these disasters, I could say one, the intensity and the extremities of these disasters have increased, the frequency have increased. So this points to, secondly, the fact that we cannot adopt a business as usual approach to the development. It has to become sustainable. And thirdly, the efforts towards climate change has not been enough, sir. So various nations have announced the INDC targets, but commitment to it is missing, especially from the developed countries, sir. So more funding and technology has to be transferred to developing nations so that they can cope up with this. And fourthly, it is also pointing to the lack of planning that includes the element of resilience in urbanization, especially, sir, if there was an element of planning, we could have at least minimized the scale of disasters. So this is what I perceive from this, sir.
Okay, so in that same context, then we are facing a paradox of water crisis is also being forecast. At the same time, you're also having catastrophic weather conditions, and which is the world's largest water sources, and is there a geopolitical angle that's staring at India, particularly in that context?
Yes, sir. Sir, the major source of fresh water is glaciers, and the abundance of glaciers are located in the North Pole, that is Arctic region, sir, and the Antarctic region. In the Arctic region, the major geopolitical angle to it, sir, now because of climate change, Arctic is slowly melting, starting to melt. And each nations around the Arctic Circle are looking to use that opportunity to conduct trade to that route, sir. So India is looking at a dilemma of tackling China or Russia, tackling China in this perspective, sir. So how far can we get ahead and take advantage of this, sir?
Now, let me just intervene. The India's river sources are in the Himalayas. Okay, the Tibetan glaciers are the largest water sources.
Yes, sir.
And there is, a movement from China towards, strategizing on exercising complete control on some of those areas. So there is a problem that's staring at India and China with some action that China is doing with respect to one of the rivers, which is a major river which flows in Northeast India. Are you aware of that? And can you talk about that?
Yes, sir. Sir, China is currently building dams across the river Brahmaputra called River Yamse in China. And this, in the era of climate change, may lead to either water scarcity if China decides so, or either extreme flooding if China decides so. So that is the issue we are facing, sir.
Okay, so in the Brahmaputra, that when it enters India in the northeast and that looping region, it's one of the largest canyons in the world, and China is constructing a dam and is also, possibly going to be diverting water into their arid regions in that region.
Yes, sir.
These dams are likely to be much bigger in scale as compared to Three Gorges. Now,
Yes,
there's a
sir.
lot of hue and cry with respect to China itself in the context of these engineering huge constructions leading to impact on climate change as well. But here, with respect to water being diverted, is another major problem area that could crop up between India and China. And China may not respect the rights of low riparian states. And India and Bangladesh are the main ones that will get affected in this.
Yes,
So
sir.
this is something that you probably can look at it from the context of water.
Yes, sir.
Let's come to the other area of, again, related to climate and environmental issues. India is blessed with a lot of sunlight and wind energy, and you're in Coimbatore. So have you seen the area where there's lots of wind mills that are located in Coimbatore? And can you explain the reasons why they are there and how are they doing? And what about Tamil Nadu policies? Has there been some change with respect to promoting and encouraging the renewable energy sources?
Yes, sir. Sir, in Coimbatore, there are three regions where this wind energy mills are very prominent. One is Palakkad Gap, sir. So when air gushes from the seaward and then through land through a very narrow passage, the force is simply very large, and the wind energy mills are tapping it. And second region is Pollachi in Coimbatore, sir. That is another region where this is being done because it is a lot of plains. The scope is more. And thirdly, in the Western Ghats, also in some of the hilly regions, on the top of the hills, they place these windmills to extract energy. As to whether Tamil Nadu government, what it is doing, sir, Tamil Nadu government has been promoting wind energy by allowing the textile mill producers and other players, industrial players, to have captive wind power plants, sir. So that is one way it is doing it. And secondly, through renewable purchase obligations, the TANGEDCO, that is Tamil Nadu Electrical Distribution Company, it has been mandated to buy certain component of wind power generator. And Tamil Nadu government is also facilitating implementation of centrally sponsored schemes like the National Wind Solar Energy Hybrid Policy. So all these a good mix point to the Tamil Nadu government is looking at tapping it. And recently, sir, even Tamil Nadu government has taken up the collaboration with Denmark to establish offshore wind energy plants, sir.
Okay, so there seems to be some change in policy with respect to incentives that were offered earlier.
Yes, sir.
Another region is southern part of Tamil Nadu, Tirunelveli region also has a massive amount of windmills that have been actually built over there. So these two are the major regions. But in the context of now giving encouragement to solar energy, and the new technologies are coming in the battery related technologies. So I think there is a policy, somewhat it has played out this way that the wind energy, they felt that enough incentives have been given, they've shifted the incentives to solar energy rather than supporting both. So there seems to be a loss to some extent on the wind energy side, and focuses on solar energy. So this is what, in the policy angle, you probably will have to study that a little deeper. That's
Yes,
one.
sir. Yes,
right?
sir.
In the context of your basic strength on communication technologies, where are we now heading with respect to telecommunications in Indian telecommunication scene?
Yes, sir. Sir, the situation in telecommunication industry in India is quite worrisome, sir, because when it comes to private sector, there is a situation of duopoly, especially with Vodafone going into crisis. So there is a situation of duopoly, sir. And with respect to public sector and telecommunications, the BSNL and MTNL account for just 10% market share, sir, together. So presently it is in a worrisome situation, sir. At the same time, there are also some positive developments in the telecommunication sector. For example, the government is pushing out the 5G communications in a very rapid pace. The digital communications policy 2018 have given some push. It is also trying the production linked incentive scheme for telecommunication industry, sir. I think we will have to wait and see how this pans out, sir.
So is there with the kind of decline that BSNL and MTNL are going through, is there something to be worried about in the context of national security?
Yes, sir, I think so, because the telecommunication has been listed as a strategic sector in the latest public sector enterprises policy of Government of India. And strategic sector means government needs to have a bare minimum presence in telecommunication sector, but that can be ensured only when the telecommunication companies are healthy financially. Currently, BSNL is facing huge losses, and it is not simply able to withstand the competition from private sector. So I think there is a concern, sir.
Okay, the national security angle is from the context of huge infrastructure that BSNL has, which
Yes,
needs
sir.
to remain, in the government and public sector control. And
Yes,
therefore,
sir.
the need for making BSNL and MTNL commercially more viable and competitive. That's the angle.
One more also I'd like to add, sir,
Yes.
if you may permit. Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sir, there is also this concern of security aspects with regard to 5G equipment. So the base or core infrastructure has to pass some credibility or criteria so that they can be labeled as trusted. Otherwise, it may be vulnerable to be exploited by countries like China for waging cyber warfare, sir.
Okay, yeah, that's true. But that's a different dimension on technology angle itself. Okay. Anyway,
Yes,
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody wants to say that? Rudra? Rudra?
Yes, I'm ready.
Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me, Sharma?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, what are the terms and conditions on the basis of which USA is leaving Afghanistan?
Sir, one, that the Taliban would cease the violence, sir. That is the first important condition.
Okay.
And secondly, sir, that the intra-Afghan dialogue that has to be going on. So that is the second condition on which they are leaving. So a power sharing deal between Taliban and Afghan government can be brokered between. So these two are the conditions I'm aware of, sir.
Okay. How practical is it for them to ask for these two conditions to be observed by an organization like the Taliban?
Sir, in my opinion, to expect a violent non-state actor to adhere to these standards is not practical because the US has, though it has honored the deal and left, but still Taliban are continuing the violence, sir. So the human rights abuse have increased, the women rights issues have also increased. So in my opinion, it is not practical to expect Taliban to adhere to these deals, sir.
Okay. So what do you see will happen, say, 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line?
Sir, intelligence reports from the USA have pointed to Taliban capturing more than 80 districts already. And so I think down the lane, it is very likely that the Taliban will take over the governmental control, sir.
I see. Okay. How would that impact on Indian interests?
Sir, India's interest is primarily in the development projects. More than 500 development projects worth rupees 3 billion, US dollar 3 billion have been put in. Firstly, that would be already the Taliban have started attacking the Afghan-India friendship dam. So our developmental investments are at threat. Secondly, the violence in Afghanistan could spill over to the Jammu and Kashmir region because it shares a border with Afghanistan, sir. So that would be a huge internal security challenge for us. And thirdly, sir, it is also becoming vulnerable to increase the role of Pakistan and China in the region, and we may lose access to Afghanistan and Central Asia at large, sir. So these are the concerns.
What is the nature of the dialogue which India has initiated with Taliban fairly recently?
Sir, India has not explicitly started a dialogue, sir. It is more of a back channel dialogue with the help of Qatar, sir.
Why is it back channel? Because now everybody knows what's happening. Is there anything to be gained by a back channel diplomacy, or is it better to come up front?
Sir, I think the situation is very complex, sir, because India has been consistently against dealing with the terrorists and an organization which conducts such a violence. India doesn't want to be seen as one who supports Taliban by legitimizing it and dealing with it directly. So to resolve the dilemma, we are starting to intervene in the matter, but more implicitly, sir, very cautiously.
But do you see the dialogue leading anywhere? How is the Taliban interested in making up with India?
So yes, sir. Agreeably, it has posed some complexities. We are not able to move forward, but at the same time, India is actively pursuing regional cooperations or groupings also in this matter. We are using the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the process. Even Honorable External Affairs Minister visited Iran recently to talk about this. I think India is making all efforts. I think we have to wait and watch, sir, for further developments.
Okay, let us assume that all this fails, which is very likely, and the Taliban also increasingly gets involved in the conflict with our security personnel along the border and so forth. How do you think India should react?
Sir, I think India should mount up its defense capabilities, offensive capabilities at the border, sir. But I think it is more in the Pakistan occupied region that this conflict is going to happen. I think we have to collaborate with larger groupings like Quad or SEO to pressurize Pakistan and make Pakistan influence Taliban indirectly and stop the violence, sir.
You see, once the United States quits Afghanistan, it will only take a long-range view of what's happening. It will not try to get back into a conflict which has left with great difficulty and at the cost of so many lives. So do you really think Quad or anybody else is going to come to our assistance? I think we are going to be on our own.
Yes, sir. It is unrealistic to expect US support, but I think we can still influence US and we can still play out our part with the regional partners like Pakistan can be considered, sir. Engaging with Pakistan can be considered on this account. Even China can be engaged on this matter. China also is concerned about violence spilling over to its Xinjiang region. So I think there is a common convergence over peace and stability in Afghanistan. So regional effort could be a more practical way forward, I believe, sir.
Under normal conditions, yes, but don't forget that two of the principal actors, China and Pakistan, are certainly not our friends. So if they can ensure that the conflict is something we have to deal with, then neither of them is going to be bothered. Suppose, for instance, they say you can do what you want with India, leave Xinjiang alone.
Yes,
And
sir.
in any case, you see, you cannot compare the two because China will use any means at its disposal to ensure that unrest is not created along its borders or in its territory.
Yes, sir. Sir, then
So,
I think going forward, the only practical way to be the bite the bitter pill of engaging with the Taliban actively, sir, so that our interests, we sensitize the Taliban towards our interests, and also play a major role in having roping in the Afghan government to have a power share. So that is the most probable way we can meet this complexity, I believe, sir.
no, when you say actively engage with them, you're talking about dialogue.
Yes, sir.
I don't think that the Taliban are going to be won over by things like that. Are you optimistic?
Sir, I'm cautiously optimistic, sir, because I could not think of a very different alternative at this moment, sir.
All right.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Tell me about something different. Okay. Tell me about the achievements of the ISRO, Indian Space
Sir,
Research Organization.
yes, sir. Sir, firstly, ISRO has sent a lot of satellites into the space, and which have been used in various purposes like remote sensing, mineral exploration, education, etc. Sir. Secondly, ISRO has also remarkably reduced the cost of commercial launches, sir. So that is one more area where it has done. And thirdly, ISRO has also commercialized the spin-off technologies by partnering with private players. For example, sir, the silica clothing, it is now being manufactured, and it is a military-grade cloth. So things like that have also been coming out of ISRO, sir. So this is how ISRO has contributed broadly.
There is a point of view which says that to a certain extent all this fair because we get some benefit from it. But then there is a lot of pessimism about what some of ISRO's activities are likely to gain for India. For example, going to the moon or sending explorations to other planets. How does that help this country in any way is the question being asked. Are we just wasting money on things which should not be of any use to us? Just for the sake of glory or saying, yes, we can compare with any other country? Or is there anything more to it?
Sir, I think a more deeper insight would give the answer, sir. Firstly, interplanetary explorations are not something which is done by a huge number of nations. So if India is able to do that, it would join a few elite club of nations, and thereby it is crucial for India to portray itself as a major power in the international forum. And secondly, sir, studying interplanetary studies or such kind of travels will help us better understand our own planet itself in the light of climate change, or how better we are able to understand our planet itself. So that will also be one key aspect. And thirdly, sir, ISRO, it means ISRO, if it pursues such a project, it will boost the scientific temper of the citizens at large. So I think that is also one positive development. I think given that ISRO is doing it at a much lower cost, I think we can afford to achieve these objectives, sir.
Well, as far as climate change is concerned, I think we may not need much data from somewhere else. The solution lies in our own hands, and we've been talking about it for decades. But nobody's been doing very much to arrest the slide. That is one. Then how does being a member of a select group of countries, how does that help India in any great way, you see? Because that doesn't help you with your education policy or your health policy or with anything else. It doesn't remove poverty from the land. In fact, the criticism has been made that a huge amount of money is being spent on all these moonshots and things like that, which are of no direct benefit to the people.
Sir, I think sir, from a different perspective, I would like to answer this. Sir. Sir, whenever such interplanetary missions or such moonshot projects are carried on, it isn't just about the project, sir. That kind of project would involve a huge amount of spending on infrastructure, and it would lead to a lot of job creation, sir, surrounding both within ISRO as well as the ancillaries required for it. So I think it also benefits the people in the process. So I think from that perspective, it can be justified, sir.
Well, okay, we can end on that optimistic note. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
One question, Sharma.
Yes, sir.
There's a perception in the geopolitical angle that India's connectivity, India's interaction with its neighbors, be it Bangladesh, be it Sri Lanka, or Afghanistan is always oscillating. If they have pursued a policy of steadiness, a lot of India's stature would have improved a lot. India would have become a more dependable ally. What do you say about this?
Sir, may I request to know that whether this policy is with respect to any particular part of the world, sir?
No, it is with respect to India's neighbors, Bangladesh,
Yes, sir.
Afghanistan, and Sri Lanka. It is found, it is always, the perception is that India is always oscillating. It didn't have a steady policy towards anything,
Yes,
which
sir.
sort of diffused India's nature as a reliable interactor.
Yes, sir. Sir, here I would like to take I would like to appreciate the complexity first, sir. So because the situations in the global sphere, they change very fastly, sir, and we cannot afford to have static principles guiding our international relations. So that is the first point, sir. Secondly, India, even though it has not been consistent or rapidly changing its policy stances, it has stuck to core principles of mutual non-interference, respect for territorial sovereignty. So such basic principles still continue to guide our relations, sir. And thirdly, even though there may be a rapid shift, but still we are doing our best to cater to the neighboring nations' interests in form of neighborhood first policy in across various spheres like economy, trade, connectivity, and people-to-people contacts. So I think in current world where everything is changing rapidly, there needs to be a faster adaptation or a more realistic approach to foreign policy, sir.
Okay. Good. Anybody wants to make any observation? Sripati ji, you want to comment on his?
Yeah, I think he has conducted himself very ably.
Very nice.
Though we have taken, I think, about 1.5 hours, not 1.5, but a little less than that. But still, he answered almost every
He
question.
has handled all problems well.
Huh?
He has handled all questions fairly well.
Absolutely, yes, yes, yes.
Definitely.
Confident in your replies, responses, and I don't think you even minced your words. You did not know, but still you were thorough with your views.
Mm.
So that's
Thank
what
you, sir.
I would wish all the very best. Hope to see your name in the list of candidates selected for IAS.
Best
Thank
wishes.
you very much, sir.
We would see you as a selected officer in our next meeting. God bless
Thank
you.
you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And I would like to
Best.
feedback of
Best.
other members also if there is any, sir.
All the best. You did very well today.
You did very well. And if you have got anything to discuss with before interview, you can bring up to us, bring up to me or anybody else.
Actually, this last time I had met Sir Rudra Gangadharan Shri sir. I met him in the last interview. He had asked me a question on Atmanirbhar Bharat, and I did not fare well on his question, sir. I
No,
just
you have
want
done
to ask,
extremely well.
have I improved well compared to that, sir?
No, you have done extremely well today. Very good.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
You
sir.
have done
Thank
very
you.
well. You have done very
All the
well.
best. All the best. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All the best. All the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.